And I really wanted to do it. It was very unusual about this old vaude. Well, maybe it'll be good. I don't know. But this old vaudevillian living in a theater and a little girl who runs away from an orphanage.
Buddy Hackett spent most of his life making people laugh. For decades, audiences packed theaters just to hear him talk for a few minutes. He became one of America's most recognizable comedians, a man whose face, voice, and timing were impossible to forget. But behind the laughter, the final years of his life became painfully tragic. His body was slowly failing him, doctors warned him repeatedly, and the woman who loved him for nearly 50 years watched helplessly as the man she knew disappeared piece by piece. And when the end finally came, it happened quietly, far away from the spotlight he once dominated. Buddy Hackett was born Leonard Hacker in Brooklyn, New York, on August 31, 1924. His parents were hard-working Jewish immigrants struggling to build a better life for their family. There was no Hollywood connection, no wealth, and no easy path to success. But from an early age, Leonard discovered something powerful. He could make people laugh. As a child, he developed Bell's palsy, leaving one side of his face partially paralyzed. His speech carried a natural slur, and his uneven smile made him a target for cruel jokes. He was also overweight growing up in rough Brooklyn neighborhoods where weakness was noticed immediately. But instead of fighting with his fists, Leonard learned to survive with humor. He could turn bullies into an audience within seconds. Comedy became his defense, then his identity. After serving 3 years in the United States Army during World War II, he returned home determined to perform. Like many comedians of that era, he started in the brutal Catskills resort circuit, sleeping in cheap rooms, performing for difficult crowds, and struggling just to get noticed. Somewhere along the way, Leonard Hacker became Buddy Hackett. The new name worked. By the 1950s, Buddy was climbing fast. His breakthrough came on Broadway in Lunatics and Lovers, where audiences fell in love with his unpredictable energy and physical comedy. Hollywood soon followed. He starred in classics like The Music Man and It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, proving he could hold his own alongside major stars. Then came television. Buddy became a regular on late-night talk shows, especially alongside Johnny Carson, where his wild stories and fearless humor made him unforgettable. Later generations knew him as the voice of Scuttle in The Little Mermaid. Even children who had never seen his stand-up recognized that voice instantly. But while audiences saw confidence, Buddy carried deep insecurities throughout his life. The scars from childhood never fully disappeared. And despite all the fame, there was one part of his life he valued more than anything else: his wife, Sherry. Before meeting her, Buddy's romantic life was unstable and short-lived. He buried himself in work because he believed his appearance made him impossible to truly love. Then he met Sherry Cohen, a dance instructor from Brooklyn working long hours to support herself. She wasn't impressed by celebrity dreams or comedy club attention. In fact, she rejected him several times before finally agreeing to a date during a rainy Sunday afternoon. That one date changed everything. The two married in 1955 and stayed together for 48 years, an almost unheard of achievement in the entertainment industry. They raised 3 children together, including their son Sandy, who later followed Buddy into comedy. At home, Buddy was nothing like the outrageous performer audiences expected. Friends described him as quiet, sensitive, and intensely protective of his family. He kept Hollywood away from his children and separated his stage persona from his private life completely. To Sherry, he wasn't the loud comedian America adored. He was simply her husband. And for decades, their life worked beautifully. But in the early 1990s, something changed. Doctors diagnosed Buddy with severe coronary heart disease. His arteries were dangerously blocked, and cardiologists warned him he needed bypass surgery immediately. Without it, they told him plainly, his heart would continue deteriorating until it eventually failed. But Buddy refused. He didn't want surgery. He didn't want hospitals. He believed he could manage the condition with medication and determination. Doctors warned him that medicine would only slow the damage, not stop it. Still, he ignored them. For a while, he managed to continue working. But the damage inside his body kept growing. Then came 1996. During a live performance, Buddy suddenly became dizzy and short of breath in the middle of the show. The room spun around him. His chest tightened, and for the first time in his career, he lost control on stage. He walked off and never returned to full-time performing again. That night effectively ended Buddy Hackett's career. He later insisted the collapse had been caused by recent gum surgery rather than his heart problems. But doctors strongly disagreed. Behind the scenes, another serious illness was making everything worse: advanced type 2 diabetes. Together, diabetes and heart disease were destroying his body from the inside. Simple tasks became exhausting. Walking across a room left him winded. Stairs became nearly impossible. The man who once bounced across stages making audiences roar with laughter now struggled to move through his own home. Eventually, Buddy disappeared from public life almost entirely. He became deeply self-conscious about his physical decline and refused to let people see him weak. Invitations slowed down, but even when opportunities came, he stayed home. He wanted fans to remember the energetic comedian they loved, not the fragile man he believed he had become. One of the most emotional moments of his decline came when he sold his lifelong firearm collection. Buddy had loved collecting weapons for years, not because of violence, but because he admired the craftsmanship and history behind them. But as his health worsened, he realized he could no longer safely maintain the collection. Selling them felt like surrendering his independence. In his final years, Buddy and Sherry retreated to their beach house in Malibu, far from Hollywood. Together, they focused on something completely different from entertainment. They founded the Singita Animal Sanctuary, rescuing abandoned dogs and cats. For Buddy, the sanctuary became deeply personal. He spent his days caring for animals, feeding them, cleaning cages, and giving comfort to creatures nobody else wanted. It gave him purpose during a period when comedy had vanished from his life. After retiring from regular performances, he made only one exception: annual fundraiser shows for the animal sanctuary. There were no cameras, no Hollywood executives, and no pressure. Just Buddy helping save animals he cared about deeply. But by 2003, his health collapsed completely. Roughly 1 week before his death, Buddy suffered a severe stroke that robbed him of much of the strength he had left. Sherry remained beside him constantly, just as she had for nearly half a century. Then, during the final weekend of June 2003, Buddy Hackett died quietly inside his Malibu home. There was no dramatic hospital scene. No public goodbye. Family members simply found him gone. The official cause of death was complications from chronic heart disease and diabetes, the exact illnesses doctors had warned him about years earlier. He was 78 years old. In accordance with his wishes, Buddy was cremated privately. He did not want a public grave or a celebrity memorial. He wanted his remains kept with his family, away from cameras and attention. For Sherry, however, the real heartbreak began after his death. Friends like Jeff Ross and Jay Moore came to comfort her in those first devastating hours, but once everyone left, she faced an unbearable silence. After 48 years together, she no longer knew how to exist without him. She later described losing Buddy as feeling like losing half of her own body. For months, she disappeared from public life. She focused entirely on the animal sanctuary, trying to continue the mission they had built together. But without Buddy's celebrity presence attracting donors, maintaining the rescue operation became incredibly difficult. Rumors later spread online claiming Buddy died broke and left Sherry financially ruined. Those stories were false. Buddy had substantial assets, but most of the wealth was tied to real estate rather than cash. Their Beverly Hills home alone sat on one of the most valuable pieces of land in Los Angeles. Still, the emotional burden was enormous. Years later, Sherry finally sold the home where they had raised their family. Not out of desperation, but because she was finally ready to let go of the physical reminders surrounding her every day. Even through grief, legal battles involving family matters, and years of loneliness, Sherry continued protecting Buddy's legacy with dignity. She rarely spoke publicly, but when she did, she made one thing clear: the world knew Buddy Hackett the comedian. She knew Buddy Hackett the man. And those were not always the same person. The audience saw laughter. She saw the fear, the pain, the stubbornness, and the quiet heartbreak hidden underneath it all. Buddy Hackett spent his life making millions laugh. But in the end, his story became something far more human, a story about aging, love, pride, illness, and the painful reality that even the funniest people in the world cannot outrun time forever. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Prestige Buzz, and turn on the bell notification so you never miss another story from Prestige Buzz. And don't forget to check out the next video on your screen for more unforgettable Hollywood stories and hidden truths behind the legends.